I'm going to ask Alison up here. Those of you who haven't met Alison, you've been missing out. Alison is the Darsen Environmental Officer. She leads the Darsen Environmental Group. She sits on the Net Zero Working Group. She's quite the prophet amongst us, and we welcome her for it. She's an LLM, a licensed lay minister, so Jane is warden of the LLMs, and she's a member of All Saints Guildford, and is a great colleague. She does all her work voluntarily, gives one day a week of her work time to us, and we're very, very grateful. And so we're going to do some of the carbon literacy training, which is a well-recognised training programme. This is all part of our net zero by 2030, carbon net zero by 2030 plan. So we're on the way, and it's by no means impossible for us to meet net zero by 2030. For all sorts of reasons, it is achievable. And so we're both encouraged. It's still challenging in terms of implementation, and we'll see how we get on. But today is really one step in the right direction. So, Alison, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Oh, can we have the first slide, please, if that's okay? Thank you. So this is the how-to. This is the Carbon Literacy Project training. It's an international thing. I'll tell you a tiny bit more about it in a minute. But what we're basically doing is giving you the first part of training on carbon literacy. Thank you. The next slide. I'll just tell you a tiny bit about myself. Thanks, Erin. So, as Peter said, I'm an LLM at All Saints in Guildford. I came into environmentalism a slightly roundabout way. I had an email from Greenbelt. Greenbelt throw out emails, a lot of you will know, all year round. And I got one it was in Holy Week, actually, in 2019, I believe. And there was a 1-minute video from Rowan Williams on that email. And in the 1-minute video, he opened up by saying, or by talking about the possible extinction of the human race. And I heard that, and I went, don't be daft. Don't be silly, what a load of rubbish. But then I stopped and I thought, it's Rowan Williams. He wouldn't say that unless he believed that to be true. So I spent an hour online just searching it up. He'd mentioned something called Extinction Rebellion. He'd mentioned all sorts of other things in UN reports and COP and stuff. So I had a little look, and that hour turned into an evening, and that evening turned into most of the night. And by 10 o'clock the next morning, I was in London, handing out leaflets, because I was like, this is it. This is the moment that we are called to do something, just as previously people have been called to be suffragettes, or previously people had been called to make those efforts to protect people in world wars and things like that. This is the moment that we're being called. So I heard that calling on that day, and life hasn't really been the same ever since. So that's just who I am. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what I would like you to do, I would love you to work in deanery groups today, because I think when you're geographically connected to each other, you're all together, it's really helpful. You can do things together. So in your deanery group, could you, in a group of 4, group of 6, try not to be with everyone from the same church, but could you just find a group in your deanery, and I'd like you to introduce yourself to the people in your group. Could you tell them, do you have an eco team? And could you tell them, do you have a net zero plan? You've got 1 minute per person to speak. Off you go. And can we have the next slide, please? Okay. Thank you. So, Carbon Literacy Project. This is something that had started off in Manchester. They wanted everybody to be able to live a more sustainable lifestyle, and they realized that actually you need to know something about what your lifestyle is already and how it's contributing carbon-wise in order to be able to do something about it. So they developed this for the city of Manchester. It's been rolled out internationally. So 19 different nations now delivering it. It's in 12 different sectors: film industry, history and all sorts of things. They've got their own one. Nearly 500 courses have been designed, and this course has been designed specifically for the Church of England. So this is our course that I'm giving you right now. Next slide, please. Thank you. At the end, if you do the full course, so what we're doing is we're doing about half of it today, or maybe a little bit less, but we're going to give you the option to finish off the course on Zoom with lots of dates and, like, you know, in slightly smaller groups and in that kind of way. If you finish the course, you write 2 pledges at the end. One is a pledge about your own personal carbon consumption, and the other pledge is the influence you can have within your sphere, which obviously for everybody here really is within your church. And if you make those 2 pledges, they get sent off to the Carbon Literacy Project. And if they accept your pledges, then you are qualified, you are certified as carbon literate. So it's quite a nice thing to be able to say, you know, I've got a carbon literate certification, I've done that training, I know about this. If you are an archdeacon, then your sphere of influence is much bigger and your pledge needs to be a little bit bigger. If you're a curate and, you know, you don't have as much, or an OLM or something like that, then they take into account what your sphere of influence is. But next slide, please. Thank you. Just a quick question, really. What do you think carbon literacy means? Could you, just to the person next to you, try and work out what do you think carbon literacy might be? You've got 2 minutes. Okay, would anybody like to shout out what they think it might be? I'm gonna take a suggestion from the floor. So anybody got an idea? What does carbon literacy mean?
Understanding your carbon footprint.
Understanding your carbon footprint. That's a lovely idea. Any other ideas?
Understanding what the effects of too much carbon are.
Okay, so understanding your footprint, understanding the effects of carbon generally. Brilliant. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. It is an awareness of the carbon costs and impacts of everyday activities and the ability and motivation to reduce emissions on an individual, community, and organizational basis. Which, in slightly less dense English, is understanding what I actually need to do, where I can get the help to do it, actually doing it, and seeing that I've done it. That's carbon literacy in a nutshell. That's what we're trying to give you the ability to do today. So, next slide. There are some environmentalists, and they will absolutely love to tell you how dire everything is and how awful the prognosis. There are some newspapers that want to do that as well. I'm afraid I'm not the bad cop in this. I'm the good cop. We can do this. It's amazing what is happening. God is calling everybody to make these commitments, to make these changes, and we can absolutely do it. For example, I do believe that Guildford Diocese has the highest number of Eco Awards of any diocese in the country. And that is the motivation and the work of the people in this room here. Thank you so much for doing that. We also happen to have the highest return rate for the EFT in the country last year. We moved up 50% in our reporting. EFT is when you report on the parish returns system on how much your bills were so that we can calculate your carbon. I'm going to come back to it in a little while, but we had the highest. We moved up a massive amount, 50% more responses, and it's all doable. I mean, imagine the possibilities. I'm going to do a bit more imagining with you in a minute, but that's if you take nothing else away from what I say today, please just believe we can do this. Net zero is possible. So, let's move forwards with hope. But first of all, we need to think, thank you, next slide, we need to think about where people are in all of this. So, for example, this was a questionnaire that went out during April 2020. So just as the pandemic had started, They asked people in lots of different countries around the world, what about the comparison between COVID and the climate crisis? Are they of equal seriousness? And in the UK, 66% of people, even in that moment of absolute crisis, said that climate change was equally important. 66% of people. Globally, it was 71. Next slide, please. This is the University of Oxford at the same sort of time. It was in 2020, and they did a study using gaming apps. So they did a worldwide thing. But this was often, it was 14 to 18-year-olds that were responding on it. In Britain, 81% of the respondents said they felt that climate crisis was equally as important to COVID. That's the younger generation, that's their voice coming through. That's their voice telling you how important they feel this is. Next slide, please. This is from Tear Fund and Youthscape did some research together called Burning Down the House. This again came out in 2020. 9 out of 10 of the young people that they spoke to, these are Christian people who go to church, 9 out of 10 of them felt that they were very concerned about the climate crisis, but only 1 in 10 felt their church was doing enough about it. And what that means is that those young people weren't losing their faith, but they might not be coming to church. They might be going somewhere else to try and find where that information, where that action is happening, and join with it elsewhere. If you want to have mission with young people in your church and you're not responding to this crisis, their future, you might be losing them because of it. So that's really worth keeping in mind. Next slide, please. Now, David's already told us so much, but this is my take on the 5 marks of mission. Apologies to anyone who's heard this slide before. We have 5 marks of mission. We used to have 4, but they put another one on, and that was number 5, to treasure the earth. And I think a lot of people think, oh, number 5, brilliant. Well, there's a list there. We do number 1, and then we do number 2. And if we've got any money left and any energy at all, we might get on to number 5. I don't see it that way at all. Treasuring the earth is not a single, thing that we get to when we've ticked off everything else. We need to tell people about God. That's our first mark of mission. The only visible thing we have of God around us is creation. How can we tell people about God without telling them about creation? We need to teach people about Jesus. John 1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Through him all things were made." He doesn't start off by saying, there was this man who came to save us. Or he doesn't talk about redemption. The very first thing he tells us is about a creator, Jesus. How do we teach people about that Jesus if we're not caring for the creation that we are told that he was part of? We need to tend to people. And there is great injustice. There is massive injustice in the world. But there's injustice in our own communities as well, around heat and all sorts of things. We need to look after the people that are suffering so massively. And we need to transform the unjust structures of society. There is no greater injustice in the world today than the climate injustice, and we'll come to that. And we need to treasure the earth. It's there in everything we do, not just the bolt that you stick on the end. So that's I feel very strongly about that. And thank you. Next slide. So General Synod, again, this came in, so this was our net zero by 2030 target. General Synod brought that in, which was absolutely wonderful. And people will say it's not possible. I don't believe that. I believe it is. And I believe in this place. I believe in, with all the people that are listening and taking this on board, I believe we can do it as a diocese, and that's what I want to see us do. So the next slide, thank you. I've given you a pack for each deanery, and in it there are 2 of these. If you need, I've got a couple more if you want. We did suggest that you might want to watch Climate Change: The Facts at home, and this is a small quiz based on it. So if you could just, in your deanery groups again, do you want to just somebody read out, and then you work together? I'm going to give you about 7 minutes, so it's not very long. Be quick, but just see if you can get through that quiz together. Thank you. Feel free to shout out the answers. It's absolutely fine. So, true or false, at the point that that documentary was made, the 20 hottest years on record had all occurred in the previous 22 years. True or false? Absolutely right. Isn't that astonishing? 20 of the hottest years in the previous 22. Before the Industrial Revolution, the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere was 280 parts per million. What is it now? Anyone? Over 400. Actually, of May 2022, last year, it was 421. So it's rising rapidly. Number 3, we had the hottest heat on record last year, 22. It reached 40.2 degrees in Wisley, which is only 15 miles away from here. What was the top temperature in the heat wave of 1976? Anybody? 35.9, but that was the absolute hottest. The average was 32. You sometimes get people going, oh, wow, in 1976, we had a heat wave and it lasted for 3 weeks. Yeah, but it was 32 degrees. It wasn't 40. That's the difference. So it's quite nice to know that. Approximately how much higher is the global average temperature than before the Industrial Revolution began? 1.1, yeah. And what percentage of our emissions are being caused by deforestation? A third of our emissions are caused by deforestation, according to this film. And that just seems like such an easy win, doesn't it? It's just like, stop cutting down the trees. Gosh, we should be able to, it would be lovely to be able to influence that somehow. Which greenhouse gas is released when the permafrost melts? Methane. If you've seen the program, he torches it, and you get this flare coming out of ice. It's extremely visual. We're going to be talking about the gases in a minute. In which city in 2015 did we agree to limit the global rise in temperature? Paris Agreement. They said 2 degrees at the absolute outside, maybe 1.5 if we're lucky. We now know we have to keep it to 1.5. Keep 1.5 alive. So that's what's really changed. Tarawa is the Kiribati, it's the capital of Kiribati, which is that Pacific island that's just everyone's having to leave because it's just becoming inundated with waters. What percentage of the UK's electricity came from renewable sources at the point the documentary was made? It was 30. Last year, for the whole year, it was 40. That's what I mean. We can do this. It's happening. Let's join in. God's calling. In May last year, a new record was set of 72.8% renewables in May, obviously because of the solar. We can do this. Which of these is not one of the 3 steps which would halve emissions from food? Takeaways, obviously. Please don't do that. It wasn't takeaways. What would be number 3? So eat everything, so don't throw any food away. Try to avoid anything that's come in on a plane and reduce. It doesn't have to be completely, but reduce your meat and reduce your dairy. And what is the name of the student who started the strike for climate? Greta Thunberg. Brilliant. Well done. Marked your own homework. That's great. Thank you. Next slide, please. So these are the historical levels. This is the carbon that's been emitted all the way through since, on the left you can see 1958. That was 317.45, and then 2017, 409. You can just see how it's going up and up and up and up. So the picture on the right is somebody who's had the emissions in their birth year tattooed onto their hand. Just that way of remembering every time you go to do that thing that's causing more carbon. So if anybody's interested in finding out what their own birth year emissions were, come and find me and I'll show you the things later on. Thank you. Next slide. So there are several birthplaces of the Industrial Revolution. I didn't know if you know this. The Derwent Valley in Derbyshire, which is the one on the left, it claims to be the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. And there's also, that's Ironbridge on the right, which of course claims to be the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. It doesn't really matter. It started in Britain. We created this wonderful system of, and actually in Derwent, they started off with hydroelectric. And then they discovered, oh, actually, if we just burn all the coal, it'll be great. And then we thought this was so great, we kind of exported it all the way around the world and made it a global phenomenon, industrial revolutions. But we started it, and we have historical emissions. We have got to where we are because of all that has gone past, because of all of the coal and oil and gas that has been burnt before us. So we have to remember that when we talk about, what about China? What about Poland? We have to remember we started all of this and we have burnt an awful lot in our history. Thank you. Next slide, please. So fossil fuel production in the UK, there's all sorts of information about this, but I'm not going to go through all of it. So coal became the new energy source. It was mined extensively in the 19th and 20th centuries. Oil and gas were added in to the energy mix. The first commercial oil field in the UK being exploited at Eakring in Nottinghamshire in 1939. So that's a picture of it, the green nodding donkey in the middle there. Thank you. Next one. Thank you. And so we've inherited this wonderful life, where all our food is just produced by, machinery that goes up and down fields, and we have swimming pools, and we have municipal buildings, and we have lights, and we have wonderful things. And you know what? We're so lucky. I'm not dissing it. We're so fortunate. But the things that gave us this, which is fossil fuels, are now looking like they are going to destroy it. And we don't want to destroy this. That's not what I'm here to ask you to do. I'm just asking you to make the switch over from this carbon fuel to the non-carbon fuels so that we don't destroy what we have. Nobody wants to see this go. We just want it to be just, and we want things to be better. So we need to make some radical switches in the way that we're doing things. And we need to make some reductions as well. Next slide, please. So annual global fossil fuel consumption in the industrial age. Well, there you go. That's 1800. Gas, oil, and coal. Absolutely huge amounts. And this is the carbon that we're emitting now. And it's just growing and growing and growing. So we need to do something about it, and we need to make those changes. There's, this from the 1950s onwards, just look at that exponential usage. So it's been roughly doubling every 39 years since 1850. It's a 1.8% per year increase. The current rates we're going through fossil carbon 1 million times faster than it was created. If we continue like this, all the fossil fuels will run out in the next few hundred years, but we'll have destroyed civilization a long time before that. Okay, next slide. Very quickly, just to the person next to you, could you just talk about, just try and work out, what's the difference between weather and climate? Could you just see if anybody knows, just with the person next to you? Anybody got any suggestions? What is the difference between weather and climate?
Climate is a net change over a period of a minimum 30 years.
A minimum 30 years, brilliant. So, and weather?
What's happening now?
Exactly. Thank you so much. Weather is what's going on outside your window. Have a look. There's your weather. And it's what's going to be happening tomorrow and the next day on your weather forecast. That's fine. Climate is a pattern. And yeah, 30 years or longer is what you need to be able to perceive climate, because climate is the pattern of weather that repeats and repeats and repeats. We've had incredible... Oh, yes, sorry.
Is there an extent to climate?
Is there a... Sorry?
Is there a geographical extent to climate?
I...
In the sense of the climate of Britain? Or you wouldn't talk about the climate of Surrey, would you?
Well, you can have microclimates. Yeah, so climate is, you can have a pattern of weather in one particular area and larger. I don't know that there's, I mean, we talk about it in terms of boundaries, but yeah, is that okay? Thank you. Yes, we've had this incredibly stable climate. We've had this very regular pattern of seasons and pattern of weather for a very, very long time. I'll talk about that in just a second. We've known about this for a very long time as well. John Tyndall made the first reliable experiments about the greenhouse effect in 1858. Yeah, we've had time to kind of consider this. So I'm going to just very briefly talk about the carbon cycle. I don't want to go too deep, but carbon cycle just here. I found out something new doing this training when I did it, which is something that I'm sure somebody told me at school, but I completely forgot. Everything respires. So everything breathes in that sense. So that includes plants and trees. So actually, all living things will give out some carbon dioxide. So trees and forests will do it, and human beings and all animals and everything else. Trees also photosynthesize, and when they photosynthesize, they draw back in that carbon dioxide. But the funny thing is, they all lose their leaves in the wintertime. So there's actually a very big difference between summer and winter in terms of carbon in the atmosphere. Because in the summer, when the plants have their leaves, they're really drawing it down. And then in the wintertime, as they've lost their leaves, they're only producing carbon dioxide. They're not drawing it down anymore. Interesting fact I wasn't actually aware of. So this goes up into the atmosphere. It's taken down by those trees and the plant life again. Carbon is also drawn down into the oceans. Huge amount of carbon that's drawn down, and the heat as well is drawn down into the oceans. And decomposition, we have sinks, carbon sinks, where things get trapped in the ground and left there. So it's all about the fact that we are actually having more carbon in our atmosphere than historically we used to have. That's what's been happening with the climate crisis, is about having more of that carbon. Thank you. Next slide. So this is the greenhouse effect. You'll remember it from your school days when you were at school. The sun's energy comes down. Some of it bounces back into space, and some of it is trapped by the atmosphere. And the atmosphere is a bit like a blanket that just keeps some of that heat in. We need this. We absolutely are, we couldn't live without it. Without our beautiful atmosphere trapping some of the heat, it would be minus 18 as the average temperature on Earth instead of 15, which is the average temperature on Earth. So we absolutely need this beautiful blanket. But when we add on a couple more sweaters on it, when we've added more carbon or more carbon gases into our atmosphere, we've changed the dynamics, we've changed this beautiful balance, and that's what's happening by having more carbon gases in our atmosphere. Thank you. Next slide. So here are some terms that you might have heard. The greenhouse effect is the one that you've just seen, where those gases are being trapped usefully, but then when it's too many gases are trapped, it becomes less useful. Global warming is this thing of 1.1 degrees, where we have got a rise in the global average temperatures of 1.1. Climate change is the result of that. So where we have got carbon being trapped, extra carbon, trapping heat. We're seeing that weather patterns are changing. So things were very reliable, things are less reliable now, and you only need to look at the media. This morning, I looked at BBC website, and it was talking about Brazil, where massive flooding are just sweeping away houses in Sao Paulo. And this is just happening, it's almost every week now. There is somewhere else that is, New Zealand with massive flooding last week. Just so many places are suffering these disastrous consequences all over the globe. And then you will hear people talk about things like the climate crisis, the climate emergency, or climate breakdown. That's because they've chosen to use not just climate change, but another word just to put the urgency of this into their speech. So those 3 terms at the bottom all mean climate change, but they are really focusing on the urgency of the situation. Thank you. Next slide. So this is Charles Keeling, and this is his graph that shows how much carbon is in the atmosphere and the exponential increase in carbon. The sawtooth pattern that you can see there, that's summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter, with the leaves and the trees. And the next one. So this is a graph that's really useful if you can find it. Always email me, I'll always send you something if you want. If anybody sits there and goes, well, there's always been changes in the Earth's atmosphere, there's always been changes in carbon, and there's been changes in climate. Yes, there has. If you look there, the purple through to the blue, it goes up and down and up and down. That's the carbon in the atmosphere. And then you look at the very edge, that's not the line that shows you the edge of the graph. That red on the right-hand side, that's our carbon now. That's not in the normal sphere of things. That's the carbon that we've put into the atmosphere. Next slide, please. So it's not just carbon dioxide. That's the one that we talk about a great deal. But there are other greenhouse gases, very quickly, with the people next to you in your group. Can you name any other greenhouse gases, any other of those gases that create that blanketing layer around the Earth? Off you go. Okay, I'm being mean with time today because I don't want to go over. So would anybody like to shout out any other greenhouse gases that they think they know? Methane, brilliant. Yep, that's the one that we saw coming out of the permafrost. Any other ones? Ooh, sulfur dioxide, fantastic. Oh, hang on, sorry, sulfur dioxide isn't on my list. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'm going to look that up with you later, if that's all right. Well, yeah, I'm really interested because you may well be right. I might have not the whole list here. Any other ones? Nitrous oxide is definitely on there. Thank you. Yes. Any more? CFCs, brilliant. Any other ones? I don't know of that one. Let's Google it in a bit, but it's not on the list I've been given. Any more? Who said that? Water vapor. Water vapor is also a greenhouse. It does the greenhouse effect. Fantastic, thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? So here we go. We've got carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, CFCs, HCFCs, sulfur hexafluoride. Sulfur hexafluoride. I didn't know this one until I did this training myself. This is a new one for me, and water vapor. I'll just very quickly tell you what those are like. So the next slide. Thank you. So carbon dioxide, that's what we hear about. It's everywhere. Transport, because we're combusting fossil fuels all the time. Agriculture, because of the burning of fossil fuels and changes in land use, we can actually have carbon sink in our land, like peat bogs, cutting up the peat for our compost, and we're just releasing all the carbon from it. Deforestation, massive source of carbon dioxide, and coal-fired power stations, natural gas combustion. Those are the ones we have, we know a great deal about. Then methane comes from agriculture. Letting off. That's not actually farting cows, it's burping cows. But yeah, burping ruminants is actually a huge source of methane. It doesn't feel like it's very important. A few cows are burping. I'll show you on the next slide. Landfill. So everything that when we don't actually properly compost our organic waste, our food waste, we just stick it in landfill, it just creates methane. So that's why composting is so important, just collecting all of our organic waste and making sure that it goes into proper composting facilities. Surrey County Council, they do it all for us. It's brilliant. Coal-fired power stations and transport, and again, natural gas combustion for methane. Fracking, thank you. Nitrous oxide, power stations, transport, agriculture. The next slide, please. Okay. Sulfur hexafluoride down the bottom there, inorganic, colorless, odorless, non-flammable, non-toxic, extremely potent greenhouse gas, and an excellent electrical insulator. Oh dear. So here we go. Carbon dioxide, thank you. Carbon dioxide, if you have a potency of 1, if you count 1, that is your unit, carbon dioxide. Methane is 72 times more potent, which is why burping cows are important. Nitrous oxide is 289 times more potent. CFCs and HFCs, 11,000 and 5,000 times more potent. So we might only be doing small amounts of them, but what we're doing matters. And sulfur hexafluoride in that electrical insulation, 16,000 times more potent. So this is why it matters to know. This is why it counts. And that sulfur hexafluoride will last in the atmosphere for 3,200 years. It ain't disappearing. Carbon dioxide will last for a couple of hundred years. Methane, 12 years. So you see there's all of these things that really count because although we don't know about them so much, and it might be small amounts, they have a massive potency. Thank you. Next one. So 97% of all of the papers that have been written about human-induced global warming agree that it is human-induced. And that's phenomenal. Like nothing in this science world generally gets 97% agreement, but this does. So for anybody who's saying, oh, it's not human beings, just point them towards that. The next slide. 1.1 and rising. The heat that we have currently put into our atmosphere is the equivalent of 3,224,672,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs. 3 billion atomic bombs of heat. So we've made our world 1.1 degrees hotter. And that's the global average, but in some areas it's just heating up so much more than in other areas. Unfortunately, that's often around the poles. 80% of the heat is stored in the oceans, and the oceans are what drive our climate. So that heat is going into our oceans, and it's changing the balance of the world that we've been gifted, and that we love, and that we should love. So we've already had a very significant impact, and unless that lifestyle of carbon changes to something else, it's really going to destroy what we have around us. Okay, next slide. Would anybody like to ask any questions? I'm not a scientist. I have not got an environmental science background, but I will do my best to answer any questions or to find out the answers for you. But please do ask. Yes?
Alison, do you feel like some of the language around, so for example, Hiroshima and the 3 billion figure and the language of crisis, emergency, is just fueling a sense of perma-crisis, particularly for our young people, which is really detrimental to mental health, and that perhaps a constructive way forward is in what Dave was talking about this morning, about finding how we can speak into that and be a solution.
I absolutely agree with you, and I wouldn't say any of this with young people in the room, because I feel passionately that we mustn't put this on their shoulders. I remember being told at school, we're doing a terrible job with the planet. You'll have to do much better when you grow up. And what an awful thing to say to powerless, non-voting children. So absolutely right. I wouldn't say this to children, but I always tell the truth about this because, you know, that's what we need to do. We need to understand the truth, but then we also need to see the hope. And that's what I always bookend it with, that this is the truth of the crisis. This is the hope that we can make our lives better. You know, without the car, you know, without all those horrible gases around us, without the pollution, we can have a more just society where actually everybody has a home that is warm enough. That's what I want, really passionately. And I really want to see everyone with enough food and that food coming from a good place. And then I want to see that I don't want to see any more of these horrific stories, or I want to reduce as much as I possibly can the horrific stories that we hear around the place in our media about the global south, because this injustice is just unbearable and it tears me apart. So I want to envisage that better life and work towards it. And we can't do that without knowing about it first and then moving towards that place. So that would be my answer. Is that okay? Thank you. Another question.
Hi, Alison. Just following on from that last reflection, really, I think we have to hear the facts, and I mean it drew a real silence from us, really bewilderment in a way. But I think you lace your presentation and explanation with that hope. And the thing is, what environmentalists don't do too well is to look at how far we've come, because it's unintended consequences. Someone at Make Lingfield probably didn't think that they were going to really ruin the planet, and they thought it was a great idea at the time. And I think it would be good, to speak into a little bit of compassion and mercy for ourselves in our prayers and in our reflections. There is a tendency to just put the blame and the blame and the blame and just hammer us down. And I think, hope and mercy, I think we can, we heal with love.
Yeah.
And, and I think we need the balance.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful observation. I hope you all heard that about lacing.
Could we use the roving mic?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. Is Peter around? Or...
I am, but why didn't you parrot?
Okay. So we need to have compassion on ourselves as well, rather than just beating ourselves up about this. And I think that's absolutely right. We live in a society that is carbon-based, and we can't actually get away from all of that ourselves. What we can do is make our own contribution as much as we can. And what we can do is challenge those who do have the authority, that we've passed the authority to. We can challenge them to make changes, because so many changes are systemic. And we can't make these changes on our own, which is, I think, why sometimes people feel quite defeated, or feel like they're beating themselves up over something they can't change. 2 weeks ago, I went to Runnymede Deanery, and Runnymede Deanery wonderfully put on a deanery event where they invited the local MP. So rather than the MP having to go to every church, and this is part of the Eco-Church goals, so to talk to your local leaders, I would really encourage every deanery, and this is why I've put you in deanery groups. why not decide at some point to invite your local MP to, a sort of an eco-question time? Because what you're doing is you're saying that, we care about this very, very much. And you're just giving a very resounding witness to people straight into the heart of Westminster. It's not impolite in any way. It's part of our democratic right to be able to talk to our MPs. You're doing something actually fundamental about that systemic problem. So when in Runnymede, we challenged the MP about buses, because buses don't seem to work for people, and people want to use them, and there aren't the buses there. And this is a systemic problem with a law that was passed in the 1980s. So it's those kinds of things that you can actually bring. I would really, recommend that we make our own contributions, our own changes, but that we also challenge the problems that are systemic, and we take that to those who can change them. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Mike.
Without in any way minimising what we need to do with this, I think we can take hope from the fair trade movement. Back in the late 70s, it was only the sort of brown rice and sandals brigade, whereas now it's mainstream. Eco products for use in home cleaning and all the rest of it are mainstream. So individual people making individual choices can make a real difference.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. And actually, fair trade is part of the Eco-Church goals, because it's recognised as being, a very strongly part of that movement towards a fairer, juster, and more sustainable lifestyle. So thank you for that, definitely. Any other? Oh, one at the back. This one.
Just to add to the narrative of hope, many of us will remember, if you're of a certain age, the hole in the ozone layer, which has nearly disappeared because the world, corporations and governments acted globally to make the difference to ban CFCs in the manufacture of refrigeration and cooling. And it's really, and that's, I totally agree, that's the key, that we have to somehow work out ways of working globally and having things enforced that are agreed at COPs, 26, 27, 28, things like that. But just to follow on a question from that reminder, that do you know of any other big things that are in the process of being worked on at a global and corporate level and a government level that can make, because that sealing of the ozone hole made a colossal difference to various countries in the world. So do you know of any other things that are happening?
Oh, okay, thank you. I mean, what a wonderful example, absolutely. The hole in the ozone layer, somebody had to go first. And I think that's the important thing to remember as well. Somebody has to go first and go, yeah, we can't just keep depleting the ozone. We'll go first, and then some other people. It's like a domino effect. One thing happens, then everybody else joins in, just as Dave showed us earlier with that graph, the early innovators, early adopters, and then the middle. So that happens globally, and that's what we can do. We can be part of pushing our government, and then other governments will follow, just like the declaration of a climate emergency happened here first, and then about 10 other globally powerful economies followed. So yes, absolutely. In terms of the global thing, COP. Yeah, the Conference of the Parties, the COP, every year now it's happening, and they get together, and those things are trying to happen at COP level. So that's what I would say is the global thing now.
Sorry, just to follow up. So what mechanisms are there to make sure COP agreements happen?
Voters. That would be my answer there. We have to hold our governments, all of us individually. I can't hold China accountable, but I can hold my MP accountable, and I can hold my government accountable. So that's the mechanism, I would say. Lots of questions. I'm just thinking, would you like 5 minutes extra break, or should we do the another question? Yes.
I'm just curious. Hi, Alice.
Hey.
I'm just curious about, we've got a European war going on right now. And what does the arms industry, of which we are a major supplier, do in relation to climate change and war?
I don't know the answer to that, Dean, but I would guess very, very, very little. You know, that's the most carbon-intensive thing I can imagine, isn't it? And the most horrific thing. And again, you know, this is where we can hold our elected leaders accountable. This is where we can make protest if we want to, because I think it's, you know, it's horrific, isn't it? Our arms trade. There's theology going on there that I'm not going to get into the Just War principle or anything like that. So I mean that's a whole other day, and that's a whole other conference. But yeah, I don't know of anything that they're doing in order to decarbonise. Yes.
Shall we have one more question? Yes, William.
Well, just that there is a bit of a disconnect sometimes, and we're all very good at the escapism, either retail or Christian, and it's just about how I found it. It's very, getting a team together within the church to start things like this is quite a struggle. And if there's anything you can say about how you motivate to get started.
Oh, thank you. That's a really good question. There's two very quick answers to that. First one is this. It's a lovely image that I was given at the DEO conference last year. There's a rain cloud over here, and there's a rain cloud over here, and between the two is a rainbow. The first rain cloud is called denial, where it's just too big, and it's just too impenetrable, and you just kind of forget about it, and you just don't think that the climate crisis is happening, because you can't go there in your head. So you sit in this rain cloud over here. Or the other one is depression, where actually it overwhelms you and you just think, gosh, we're never going to succeed, we're never going to do anything about this, and the fatalism that comes from that. And you sit in this rain cloud over there. But between the two is the window of action. And you know, even the most ardent environmentalist sometimes goes to denial, because you've got to go on a holiday, you've got to have a bit of time with your family, and you just got to forget about it for a little while. And anybody who's an environmentalist will always have spent some time in depression. You know, that kind of sense of how do we get past this? But you've got to move yourself out, and you've got to move yourself back into that window of action, because that's what we need, is people acting, hopefully, moving forwards, hopefully, into that. If you can give something of that to your congregation, if you can just, you know, you need to talk about it realistically, but you need to put the hope in front of them as well and say, we're going to eat this colossal elephant one spoonful at a time. And this is the spoonful that our church is eating right now. We're going to start our Eco Church Awards. We're going to get a net zero plan. You can put that hope of it being possible in front of them. And I think that's the way to move forwards with your churches. But also, hopefully, you've brought me onto this. So in your deanery packs, there's a little pack for each deanery. And I have this poster, which I would really love to go up in every church. If you don't mind taking it back. We're just seeking out those people in your congregations that really have a heart for the environment. We're trying to get our eco teams a bit more active together, working together and supporting one another. So if you could take that back and just ask your ETO team, does anybody want to come and be an eco champion at the diocese? And we're going to be moving forward with that this year as well. So I think that's lunchtime. We'll be back after lunch.